All right. Thank you po, Honorable Eduardo E. Del Rosario from Secretary Department of Human Settlement and Urban Development. So let's now proceed with the next part of our program to introduce our um, our special guest and speaker for this first day of the International Housing Fiesta Filipinas. Maybe give you. I'm going to give you a brief introduction of him. So he graduated with a BS Industrial Engineering degree at UP Diliman. He joined the Phil Estate Group of Companies in 1995 as an organization development specialist and TQM trainer, where his eyes were open to various opportunities of the real estate industry. 25 years after that, he is still actively involved as a PRC licensed real estate broker, appraiser, consultant, and accredited real estate lecturer and BS REM instructor. He was the Secretary General, Treasurer, Vice Chairman of Education, Corporate Treasurer, Secretary General, and for today, here's he is our current NREA VP for Internal Affairs, our dashing debonair, pinakapogi sa lahat, Mr. Joby Tupas. Take it away, sir.
Thank you very much. Our guest speaker graduated with honors at the Ateneo de Manila College of Laws after taking up BS in Business Management from the same university. He began his professional practice as the Senior Legal Counsel at the Manila Electric Company in 2009. He was the Housing and Land Use Arbiter under the Policy Development Group of the then Housing and Land Use Regulatory Board until 2016. He became the Director for Legal, Anti-Squatting, and External Affairs Group of the then Housing and Urban Development Coordinating Council, or HUDCC, until 2017. And then he became its Director for Policy Development, Legislation, and Special Projects Group. He is now the OIC of the Housing and Real Estate Development and Regulation Bureau of the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, DHSUD. It is with great pride and honor to introduce to everyone our NREA Honorary Member, Attorney Angelito F. Aguila. Good morning, sir.
Yes. Good morning to all, and thank you, Jovi. Allow me to congratulate NREA for this very momentous occasion we're having now, notwithstanding the difficulty we're confronted with. Let me just, I won't anymore mention individually the distinguished participants here, but I'd like to proceed straight to my brief presentation to give way to the more exciting question and answer later after this. So kindly, let me just share my presentation. Thank you. Okay. This is supposed to be a simple updating of what's going on with the department, specifically under my bureau, the Housing and Real Estate Development Regulation Bureau. And I was kind of tinkering with the idea last night of coming up with something like a state of the DHSUD address, like SODA. Yan. Kaya lang, SONA or SODA, that's reserved for the secretary. So I just decided to just call it regulatory updates. But just the same, I would have wanted to start with when we were starting 2 years ago in 2020, the start of the operationalization of the department, when we were confronted with the pandemic. So just like the SONA, in which you can just make use of the pandemic as an excuse for everything, all the shortcomings, misgiving of the department and of the Housing and Real Estate Bureau of the DHSUD. I will start with the pandemic, confronting the DHSUD at the start, when we were just about to, and we were coping with the new mandates, the new added mandates of the department, but we tried to at least come up with many measures, issuances to address the pandemic in relation to our mandates in regulating the housing sector, particularly the real estate development sector. Okay. We recall that we had the Department Order number 4 series of 2020, probably the most important issuance with respect to our mandate in buyer's protection, wherein we provided the grace period, no imposition of penalties or surcharges for buyers defaulting in their payment for any installment or in-house financing for any purchased house and lot unit or condo unit because of the difficulties arising from the imposition of the ECQ or MECQ. We were able to make use of this the second time around when ECQ was reimposed sometime in April, and again, probably just a month ago, and we're really hoping we don't get to make use of this issue once again. At any rate, just to abbreviate this or to briefly discuss this issuance, it provides a grace period for any buyer defaulting, a 6-month sort of a moratorium wherein they can restructure payment of their accrued installment payments during the pandemic. And but again, hopefully we don't get to make use of this issue once again. The problem we are confronted now is that they changed the terminology, ECQ, MECQ to alert levels, and we probably need to come up with another issue once, making parallel what is ECQ, MECQ in relation to the different alert levels now. Okay, but we are not remiss, of course, with respect to our obligation to protect and promote the housing sector. We came up with this Department Order number 10, providing for an automatic grant of additional 1-year time of completion for all projects affected by work stoppage by reason of the various quarantine measures and lockdowns imposed all around the country. So it didn't matter anymore where is the project, where are the workers residing, because practically the whole nation is affected by the different work stoppages and lockdowns. So there's a grant of additional 1-year time of completion, but there is a clamor now that we weren't expecting that such these lockdowns, these quarantine measures would extend up to this point in time. So there is a clamor to extend or grant another 1-year time of completion, but we were saying the law, this issue once itself grants or provides our regional officers to use their discretion in providing or granting additional time of completion for all projects affected by any imposition of quarantine measures or whatever unexpected incidents or arising from the epidemic or pandemic we're having now. So again, we were able to make some measures to protect our buyers at the same time for the developers also. We have series of issuances, and again, Department Order number 3. I hope everyone remembers this. We came up with this order, Department Order, deferring the submission of proof of compliance with the Balanced Housing Development Program with the rationale that because of the economic situation we're confronted with economic difficulties, the rationale is that let the developers focus their financing, their resources to the development of the main project itself, which can generate more jobs, more employment. So, and let the submission of proof of compliance of the balanced housing or the socialized housing projects a little later. So we came up with this Department Order wherein they can submit their proof of compliance of the balanced housing or the socialized housing compliance within the first half of period of completion of the main project. But again, to clarify, if the developers intend to avail of the incentivized compliance, they are not deferred. Only if the compliance of developers are development of socialized housing projects. By reason also of the quarantine measures, we came up with MC number 7. This is it provided for alternative procedure for inspection of projects, and some regions are really using this. You can just submit videos, or you can have video conferencing, photographs. Sometimes you can have drone shots of your projects as a proof of the level of completion of your projects. And also for brokers and salespersons, on 2 occasions, we have 2020 and 2021, we gave an extension for the period of renewal of registration. And in all likelihood, we will be issuing it again this year in light of the continuing physical distancing requirement we have to observe. We don't want all of you crowding our offices when there's a need for simultaneous need for all of you to at the same time renew your registration come November and December. So probably by towards the end of this year, we'll be issuing another extension until March to give more time for the renewal of registrations of brokers and salespersons without on their part incurring the liability of having to pay the penalties for late registration. So the most probably one of the requested or clamored issuance, and actually very, very important issuance we had early 2020 upon operationalization, is that we came up with number 7. It provided for the guidelines, how do we make use of the existing incentivized compliance of the developers for the escrows, that this is MC number 7, which most importantly, first, because this is a condition for the issuance of the license to sell, it prescribed the maximum number of days for its approval. That is a 10-day period when it goes up here in the Bureau and approval by the Secretary, a maximum of 10-day period. And if we don't get to have it approved within that period, it shall be deemed approved. Developers can proceed to deposit their escrow account and have their license issued. Okay, subject to any adjustment if ever our computation will turn out to be bigger than what has been deposited by the developer. Okay. The MC also required the submission by the LG of the necessary documents to support the development of their projects, which again, these are the LGU projects for which the incentivized compliance will be allocated. So what are these documents in support or in proof of the LGU projects? We want the title of the property. We want the submission of approved plans, the programs, the costing. Costing is very important because that would justify the amount being allocated in favor of the LGUs. And we want this costing to be very reasonable, signed and sealed by a licensed architect or engineer, licensed to come up with such project costing. We want complete permits, license, and clearances of the project before we can approve the allocation of the developer's incentivized compliance in favor of these LGU projects. And then lastly, and very important also, we would not allocate or release the escrow unless first it's based on progress billing and percentage of completion. And every release will be subject to inspection and verification of the level of completion of the project, particularly of its land development, for which is being subsidized or financed by the developer's incentivized compliance. Okay. This is what we normally require to compute your escrows. So these are documents already submitted, so it should not take that much time for us to review whether the escrow amount as your incentivized compliance or the developer's incentivized compliance as computed initially by our regions are correctly or appropriately computed. So these are just the basic document: development permit, the notarized fact sheet, and NR cost estimate, and original BIR zonal value certification. We just want to take note that this is an old requirement that the land valuation shall be based on the BIR, the published BIR zonal value at the time of application for the development permit of the project. That is important. And secondly, we just want to emphasize that we are using, and in fact, we are relying, we trust the notarized fact sheet submitted by the developers. After all, these are signed and sealed by licensed architects or engineers. There are many discussions wherein we should come up with our own standard costing for projects, but apparently we have tried that before and it's difficult to come up with a uniform, at least a regional, or depending on the terrain of the project, a standard costing for the project. So in the meantime, we do rely on the notarized fact sheet submitted by the developers as the principal basis of on how we compute the project cost based on this submission. So this is how we compute it. So at least for the understanding of many developers, I presented here how do we compute the total condominium project cost, because this is very important, because you can see there we included the building construction cost is itemized, it's separately computed, because some of our regional offices are still encountering difficulties computing the required compliance for condominium projects, because they have a bigger computation of condominium project cost, because they forget, or some regions they do not up to now realize that they have to strike out or remove the commercial component of the condominium project if there's a mixed use for the project, because the balanced housing is only imposed on residential housing development. So naturally, for condominium projects, we delete that, we remove that, and we normally come up with lower computation of escrow requirement for most condominium projects. But otherwise, basically for subdivision projects, our computations are in accord with, well, usually with our regional offices. So just to report to all of you, this is how much escrows we have now. So ayan, this is not we cannot use this for our own housing needs here for the department. But this is the first time we will be officially presenting this. Nauna pa tayo kaysa sa Kongreso at saka sa Senado. They're also asking for this. But this is NREA, this is the first time we are releasing this. For 2018-2019, at the start of the allowance of this incentivized compliance, there were about 438 escrow accounts. But we are only basing this on the turnover documents to us coming from HLURB, which as of our latest inventory is about 3.2 billion, for which or were allocated to the different LGU projects. There's about 1.849 billion allocated from 2018 to 2019. Last year was a little bit lower. There was 132 escrow accounts for only about 1.03 billion, and we were only able to allocate 26 million. But let me just be clarified, when we say allocated, we have not released it so far. We have executed memorandum of agreement providing for the grant different LGUs beneficiaries, but we have not released that much, only minimally and based on progress billing with the requirement of verifying, inspecting the actual level of completion or development of the project. 2021, this year, we have so far, this is about until end of August, 144 escrow accounts already for 1.35 billion. And so far, we have allocated 1.13 billion. It's quite big because that part of that would be the Marawi rehabilitations and the 15 local government units in Batangas affected by the Taal volcano eruption. So all in all, we have about 5.6 billion of developers incentivized compliance held in different escrow accounts across the country. We have made an allocation of about 3 billion. And again, that's why I call it managing the developers incentivized compliance. We really have to handle it well, because a lot of developers are really clamoring that they are paying escrow account maintenance fee, escrow fees, and we have to help them in having this escrow released and allocated in favor of the different LGUs. Okay. The escrow is a requirement for the issuance of the license to sell. I'm briefly giving you a summary of how many licenses to sell have been issued since 2020. Categorized principally between PD 957, BP 220. PD 957 is further subclassified under open market, medium cost, and also separately for condominium projects. Same is partly true with social BP 220. So as you can see, all in all, for PD 957, we have about 398 total licenses to sell issued, with total number of units to be generated, 148,895. Socialized and economic project, all in all, 882 licenses, equivalent to about 300,000 socialized and economic housing units. So that is briefly for 2020 to June 2021. Okay. It hang. Wait for a while. Okay, that's it. Another requirement for the licensing of issuance of license to sell is the accreditation of socialized housing projects as compliance to the Balanced Housing Development Program. This is again a subject of much clamor on the part of the developer to have it decentralized, because after the issuance of license to sell of our different regional offices, this already licensed compliance socialized housing project would have to be elevated to the Bureau for approval of the Secretary if it can be utilized as a compliance project to the Balanced Housing Development Program. I understand that before there were a lot of complaints that it took so long for socialized housing projects to be accredited as compliance projects. We remember that at the start of operationalization of the department, we agreed to make use of what is actually provided in our rules, that it should only be based on limited number of documents. So this is what we are requiring now. We are in accrediting your socialized housing projects as compliance projects. So that's basically about 8 of them, which actually you have already submitted to the regional offices for the licensing of the socialized housing project. And so it should not take that long for us. And I think we're doing fairly well with respect to accreditation, for as long as there's no lacking document or insufficient supporting documents. We are able to have the accreditation approved by the Secretary even within 10 days also. So just to show you how we do it, we compute the individual valuation of per housing unit to correspond as how much the developer would be needing number of housing units as its compliance for its main project. This particular computation, hindi ko po ito pinili. I just got one computation, but this is just just to be frank and candid with all of you. This is just one submission we're in, among many others also. That's why we have to set that. How do we really compute the project cost, particularly of socialized housing projects? Because in this particular computation, and among many others, this is their socialized housing is about 145,000 only per unit, and we have been computing a lot, which is about 300 to 350,000 per unit. So this has come to the attention of the Secretary. So we are in a dilemma when it comes to the price ceiling review. How come there is a clamor for the increase in the price ceiling. Not that I'm saying this should be the right costing, the right basis for the pricing or the review of the existing price ceiling, but we have many socialized housing projects which we accredit, and we find the individual production cost or the production cost per unit a lot of them from 300 to 350,000. So that's one thing we really have to resolve when we come later on, when we come to finalize our review of the price ceilings. So just to summarize, from September 20 to September this year, we have accredited about 62 socialized housing projects as compliance project. But please take note that this should not be much concern to you, that the delay in the accreditation, because we have the deferment of compliance project. So you are given the first half of your time of completion of the main project within which to submit your socialized housing project as your compliance. But I think a lot of the developers are forgetting that your socialized housing project, once licensed, can be accredited already as future compliance, even if you're not yet ready to have your main project license. So I guess if you already have a socialized housing project, you can have it accredited ahead of the licensing of your main project. Okay, this is the nitty-gritty of what's supposed to be our discussion in the coming days, the review of socialized and economic price ceilings. And to many of our participants here, we admit the last revision of the economic price ceiling was way back in 2015. The last one for the socialized was in 2017, as against the mandate of the law that we should be reviewing the price ceilings at least once every 2 years. So we admit that our review of the socialized and economic price ceilings is really long delayed. So these are the issues, what at least on our part, we are confronted with. There's an increasing land and housing construction costs, additional costs vis-a-vis affordability, purchasing capacity of the buyers, and aggravated by loss of income and employment by reason of the pandemic. Let me just share with you, when this was initially discussed among the key shelter agencies, the first reaction was, why are we talking about increase in price ceiling? Pandemic tayo. Lalong naghihirap ang mga tao. So that's the first hurdle we really have to confront once we start coming to resolving what's the appropriate price ceilings for both economic and socialized housing. We are confronted with the issue on regulation and buyers protection versus, I'm using the word versus talaga, demand-driven industry and free market forces, which to a certain extent, we understand that developers wouldn't be selling at excessive prices if there would be no takers, no buyers. So that is something we have to settle also when we deal with the review of our price ceilings. Always popping up this issue of the private sector versus government's responsibility for socialized housing. And lately, the increase in the requirement of floor area. Before, for socialized housing, we were just talking of the requirement of a comfortable, convenient living space. But now with the pandemic, there is a bigger requirement for safe space consideration with the pandemic. But fortunately, some are saying it's not really an issue of safe space or space issue, the spread of the pandemic or of the COVID. It's more of space management, and they were citing the case of Singapore, wherein practically all families are living in, well, small condo units, and yet they were very much, Singapore was did well in managing its pandemic. So some are saying it's not really the requirement of space, it's how you manage space. So hopefully we get to consider that also in the review of our price ceilings. For many who may not be familiar with this, This is the current prevailing price ceilings we have. This is the first time, or the last time we had an adjustment of the socialized price ceiling. We came up with a tiered price ceilings for different floor areas, 22 with loft, or 24, which is about 480,000 price ceiling, up to 32 square meters, which is about 580,000. So I understand this was way back in 2017. And this is the first time we had a separate price ceiling for socialized condominium. For Metro Manila, 22 or 24, we have about 700,000, 750,000. In all other areas, 600 to 650,000. But I do understand that the private sector, the developers, are clamoring for just one standard floor area for socialized or for economic. We will resolve that when we get to really review the price ceilings. And this is the economic housing, which was set a long time ago, 2015, with a minimum of 22 square meters. That's 1,700. It's unfair for the developers. I'm using projects here of the government. Well, apparently, because really socialized housing is really the principal responsibility of the government. So towards the end, it's nice to once in a while use some Latin term, quo vadis. Where are we heading to? Where to? DHSUD? Okay. There is a need for us to learn data management, to really make use and utilize our data to make it more productive. As a matter of fact, NEDA just requested us these sets of data: the license to sell, disaggregated, the location of projects, the different market segmentations, the different developers by scale. So this, and well, early in the establishment of the department, we realized that our bureau, we need some economists here. We need some people who can deal with statistics, because we have to make use of our data to be able to come up with good issuances and good policies. So that's one challenge ahead of us. Okay, after the price ceiling, we have to fix the different housing loan packages. The word I'm using is to fix, not just review, because somehow the medium cost, the low cost, open market, and then the low cost, you have A or B as against economic. It has become a little bit, if not a little bit messy, short of saying. It's too confusing and really outdated already. So hopefully early next year, after we're done with the socialized and economic housing, we get to fix the different housing loan packages, hopefully to align it with the BIR's VAT exemptions, with the BOI's different incentives, and the different loan ceilings. Again, next year, maybe we can immediately go into this. Incidentally, also, we need to come up with the rules on conciliation, both on the part of the department and the HSAC. Before, the HLURB used to summon both the developers and the buyers, and they try to come up with some conciliation proceedings. But in light of the new mandate of the HSAC, as a separate agency, we need to review the rules on conciliation, because the department, if it attempts to do some conciliation, we might be preempting the whatever ruling the HSAC might issue if ever that dispute before the department ripens into a full-blown case before the Human Settlements Adjudication Commission. So we need to address this issue, the new rules on conciliation, both on the part of the department and the Human Settlements Adjudication Commission. And finally, establishment of the Housing One-Stop Processing Centers. It's a big task ahead of the department. We are doing it in cooperation with the assistance of the developers, with the assistance of ARTA, And just yesterday, the Office of the Presidential Advisors for what do you call that? Streamlining of government processes. We had a brief conference asking a lot of questions on how do we go about with the streamlining and establishment of the Housing One-Stop Processing Center. So big task ahead of the department. So hopefully with the partnership, our trust of promoting partners with the private sector, continued consultation. Remember, we have our TWG. It will be a lot smoother by next year when we go and hurdle all of these challenges ahead of us. Yun lang po ang nire-report ko po sa inyo on this updating. Maraming salamat po, and I'm ready to face the panel members for the question and answer. Salamat po.